Okay, in terms of the stuff, deadlines, of course, remain unchanged. Exam 3, covering part 3, exam 4, covering part 4, quizzes part 4, covering part 4. Deadline, Friday, December 7th, end of day. Exam 5, deadline's at the end of the normal final time, so it's online. For the paper, 50% deadline is December 8th, the day after the day should live in infamy. Also at the end of the day, to see if you need the final, and you can do the appropriate calculation. Actually, you can do calculations at any time with the grade calculator. To go on Blackboard, I have an Excel version and a Google Sheets version of the grade estimator. Put in best 3 exams. We'll double the score, so it's at so without putting the percentile sign in there. And then put in a hypothetical 100 for the final, and then put it in your paper, your overall quiz grade, and then it will give you your theoretical overall grade. Compare that with your real overall grade, and if it's a letter grade or more higher, then taking the final could help you. If it just like numerically improves your grade but doesn't bump it up to the next level, then it wouldn't change your grade. So if you say you've got like an 83.4, and with 100% of the final you get an 85.7, yeah, you have an 85.7, but that's still a BB. So to check, and also on the grade calculator, I got instructions on how to do it, plus the grade scale, so that we can look at it and see if it makes a difference. And if it doesn't make a difference, it doesn't make a difference. It wouldn't, it won't magically, improve. Now, taking the final is no risk. So if you go and take it, your grade can't get worse. So if you go into the final, suppose you could get a improve a letter grade, and you go into the final with an 86, and you get a 0 in the final, you'd still have an 86 because the grade that's being shown as your overall grade already assumes a 0 in the final, and you can't get any worse. So taking the final could get worse, your grade stays the same, at best it improves it. But again, it's only rational to take the final if it could improve your grade, unless you just like taking the finals, in which case I cannot help you. that's another field. Okay, so that's the, also upcoming meetings won't impact the class, but Monday coming up, I've got a meeting from noon, 12:10 to 1-ish, because over the web pages, and then on the 5th of December, I have the General Education Assessment Committee meeting from 12 to 2. So I'll be in those meetings, not in my office, but I'll be in class, like normal. So many meetings. Okay, so last time, in the time before the Thanksgiving, looking at our good dead friend John Locke, talking about personal identity. And for him, again, it comes down to consciousness. So what he's got going on is this complicated picture. So the same living thing would be the same human, and then of course it's also, if it's got the same soul, it would have the same soul, but to be the same person, you've got to have the same consciousness. So for him, you can always remember this, for Locke, wherever your consciousness goes, that's where you live. And it goes, as far as it extends into the future, that's you, and as far as it extends into the past, that's you. And as we saw, in kind of a sci-fi scenario or magic scenario, if all your memories are duplicated, then Locke's view would be that would be
separate person.
Oh, Locke's view would say it would be you, as long as you have the same memories.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If the consciousness is different,
that's not you.
then it's not you.
Yeah.
And well, no, that was Lewis that said that. Okay, same consciousness.
Yeah.
But
So
in the aspect of time travel, it'll be you up until the point that you got there, right? And then you're a different you, right?
well, if you travel back, then yeah, you would have different. Yeah, you'd have different. The you of the future would have the memories of the you in the past, so you'd be the same person, the person in the past. The person in the past wouldn't be the same as you because they had different memories.
Right.
So you'd be them, but they wouldn't be you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, time travel becomes super confusing. But then, of course, if you change the memories, then it becomes a mess. Yeah, and Locke says the reason why you can't have your memory transfer is because God wouldn't allow those kind of shenanigans to happen.
Right.
God's classic no shenanigans rules. So that's Locke's view. And again, one area where this question, again, is very practical, is the problem of, there are all these researchers trying to back up our memory, and there are people who are promising immortality through memory backup. But they need to do more philosophy, or maybe they did, they're just not bringing it up. The question would be not, could they copy your memories, which maybe they can, but the question is, can they actually copy, can they copy you? Would that be you in the future?
If they could, that'd be one wealthy company.
Yep, because everyone wants to be immortal by not dying. Now, with Locke notes, one thing, of course, we do is we forget stuff constantly. And so Locke notes that the question that we're addressing is not, is it the same substance? Is it the same person? And Locke says, well, again, if you forget stuff, then it wouldn't be you, even though you have the same.
Now say that again.
Given Locke's view, if you forget stuff, it's not, whatever you don't remember wasn't you. I don't mean like, forgetting temporarily, like kind of like forgetting like where your keys are and stuff. But if there are permanent, holes in your memory, then for Locke, that wouldn't be you. That would be missing. That would be somebody else.
But now that don't make no sense.
No, I mean, yeah, you can take the view that doesn't make any sense. That's what he claims. And other thinkers make a similar point about that.
So if you have dementia, that's not you.
Yeah. So in fact, if you're still looking for a paper topic, there was a case I mentioned where there's a person who was convicted of killing a police officer, and they're trying to execute him, and the defense is saying that it's cruel and unusual punishment because he doesn't remember the crime. And given Locke's view, I mean, they're not arguing personal identity, but given Locke's view, if someone has dementia and that's gone, they were not the person that committed the crime. They do not recall it. And so Locke would say it would be unjust to punish them for the crime they did not commit.
Yes, insanity.
Well, it wouldn't have to even be insane, because the idea would be you just don't remember.
Is that because the intent of the person is no longer there in a way?
Oh, for Locke, it'd be, the intent would be gone, but also all memory of it occurring. Because, one reason why Locke would probably think this, because he was an empiricist, so you have to have empirical proof for stuff. And when he was doing his thing, there was no, cameras and recording things. So the only record you had would be,
The mind.
remembering. And so if you have no recollection of being there, truly, then there'd be no way for you to know that it was you. And by the standards of empiricism, in a way it wouldn't be, excuse me, wouldn't be you. Because if you are your memory and you don't remember it, that's gone. Now, on one hand, you could say, if you didn't have any recording devices, etc., and you were asked, did you do this, and you check your memory and you have no recollection, you'd say, no, I did not, because you wouldn't remember. Now, again, he goes to the case where, kind of that sci-fi case where you have your, ask us to imagine a case where the consciousness is transferred. How far did we get on Monday? What was the last
That's right before you start.
Right here? Okay, good. That was a long time ago. And normally it puts like a little tag in that's the downside of not having paper. With my paper notes, I used to put a little mark. And now when I put a mark on the screen, that's useless.
So in his view, are we constantly becoming new people as we forget more and more memories?
Yeah, that would be an entailment. You would, as you lose memories, you wouldn't be that person anymore. So like when you're younger, you remember this stuff, and then as you get older and it starts to fade, that wouldn't be you anymore. Yeah, so you constantly be be a new person.
So what would he say for like repressed memories and things like that? So like say somebody in their childhood went through something very traumatic, they repressed that situation. For him, it didn't happen because it's repressed.
Well, if it was repressed, but still in there, then he would say that, yeah, you would still, because he said, he used the phrase beyond all possible recovery. So if it's just repressed, it would still be, stored in there, so to speak. So, yeah, even though the person maybe couldn't access it, I guess they would still, I guess it depends how repressed memories work. If they're still there, but you just choose not to, it's like, we don't go in that room. You would still, or you can think of like a house. Think of you are the house, and each of the rooms are the memories, and if a room is like destroyed or jettisoned, it's not part of the house anymore. But if you have a room, you just say, we don't go in that room. The room is still there.
Well, I guess it may be a confusion on my part on how repression works compared to like a dementia situation, compared to like, just like over time you forget things that occurred in your life. So it's like, I'm not sure if repression is like you just avoid the memory more, or if it's a situation where it just doesn't readily come to you. And so in a way, that'd be beyond like all possibilities of recovery. And then the situation where we say beyond possibility of recovery, at some point I feel like memory can return in that case. And so it's like, I like the theory and everything, but it takes this situation where like you would use this in the case of like a rape victim or something like that, easily it could get dismissed, because in a lot of ways, like things can get dismissed as far as like personal responsibility being attached to like memory and cognition. And so I really speaking out loud.
Yeah, you're right about memory because, like, in terms of like how repressed memories work, or is it even a thing? People do raise that question. Like you said, is it something that is just, the person's just not looking at it, it's still there, or is it that they forgot about it? But of course, if it's repressed, then it's still in there, it's just they don't, bury it. And we have memories like that they're still in there because they'll come back. Like for example, like when sometimes you'll forget someone's name. You're like, oh God, I know his name. And then you'll be like, oh yeah, it was, Humphrey Bogart or whatever. So you couldn't remember it then, but it's still in there. So Locke unfortunately doesn't say like, this is exactly what I mean by, levels of memory, but he does use that beyond recovery thing. So I guess as long as it's still somewhere in that system where you could get it back, then it's still your memory. But if it's gone irretrievably, then no. So there could be like lots of things that you don't remember now that are still in there. So if you were, if you spent like days, putting your mind back in that context, revisiting the place, eventually you're like, oh yeah, that comes back to me. So it'd be a question of like how, is it still in there? And yeah, exactly what the conditions are, Locke is not super clear, except for, beyond all recovery. So repressed memories would still be in there. And there would be the practical question of, how would you know what's still in there and not? Yeah, that's why memory is kind of a problem, because you don't always know what you remember. Sometimes it's surprising. In fact, the older you get, you're like, some memories will come back, and you're like, you totally forgot about like music you listened to years ago. You'll hear the song, like, oh, yeah, I remember that song, or hear people's names, or things that you did, and you're like, and they'll all come back. Or maybe it'll be a hallucination. At a certain point, who knows? Who knows indeed. Now Locke then turns to the question about consciousness transfer. And again, given his view, memory could transmit, at least in theory, because he says, as a way he's got to, gives the example of the prince and the cobbler, and the memory could go somewhere else. So he considers a case where you would have different substance, same consciousness. So same person, different substance. And again, this would be sort of like a sci-fi or, magic consciousness transfer. Mm-hmm. So we could use the example of, the one I use for the paper, you know, suppose you go home and you're already there, you know, imagine you get, you know, they have that company, you know, life insurance. And instead of you paying a lot of money so somebody else gets all the money when you die, your ungrateful children, that you are the beneficiary. So you go to life insurance and they say, yeah, we'll back up all your memories on our state-of-the-art system, multiple redundancy. We'll create a clone body for you, or robot body as you desire, and put an implant in your head. That way when you die, it sends off a signal, and you'll wake up here in our offices in Cincinnati, Ohio, and with all your memories, you'll be back. You survive your death. And of course they have different packages, like in terms of like how good of a body you get, you know, and how much memory you get, etc. And so suppose you get this service and you say, woohoo, I'm immortal. I'm gonna go fight a shark, see how that goes. And so you know, jump into the water, fight the shark, and then you wake up in Cincinnati, Ohio, saying, crap, I guess the shark won. And you go about your business until, you know, one morning you're sitting there eating your Cheerios, and in walks you, seemingly you. Except, you know, it's like some stitches and stuff, you know, you're like, you say, ooh, wait, what are you doing in here? And then turns out you didn't actually die, the shark just bit you in the head, you know, you washed up on the beach, you know, later, you know, but you never died. And so there was somebody in your kitchen, it was all the memories of you, you ask them all the questions, what's my favorite color, what's my favorite cereal, you know, what's my combination to my, you know, what's the passcode to my iPhone? And they know all of that. And so they have the same memories as you. So in Locke's view, you're now two separate people, because you now have different memories, but
wouldn't that mean that you inhabit two different bodies?
yeah, because, you know, the moment of the transfer, that instant, you would have all exactly the same memories. So for that instant, you would be, you'd be the same person. And then the question would be is, who is the real you? I mean, because you would say the original is you, but given Locke's view, you are your consciousness, so they're both were you, and now there's two people. Locke would say, yeah, they're not the same person anymore, because, you know, the person who got bit by the shark would have all memories of like fighting the shark and washing up on shore, and the person who woke up in Cincinnati with memories of Ohio, worse than fighting sharks, and memories of all the stuff that they were doing. So the memories would now be different, but they would be, you know,
You are the present and you are the past.
yeah. So here is, you know, they would trace back to at one point they were one person, and now you have two people. But the question is, which one is? You know, they're no longer the same. But if you said, hey, you know, which one of you went to, you know, this school? You'd both say, well, I went to that school. And on Locke's standard, you wouldn't, because before that split, you were both
One person.
one person. And so, problems. Now, Locke, of course, realizes it's a problem because personal identity is supposed to make you distinct from all other people. And so there can't be two of you, there can only be one of you, at least in theory. Although there's some, like Daniel Dennett, he's like, yeah, your personal identity, really no such thing. So there really, guess what, there really is no identity. So Locke's solution is, this could cause trouble, so God doesn't allow that to happen. But, I mean, laying aside that, I mean, it'd be interesting, I guess, you know, Twilight's own story, where God constantly keeps it from, you know, from happening. Like, why does it never work? And it cut, like, the end scene is God up there, like, sorry, no. But as a practical matter, you know, again, the researchers are trying to copy people's memories, and if they did this, which one would be you?
Are they doing that on dead people or what?
Living people, currently. Although there is the guy who's like pitching the singularity, one of the things he proposes is basically a reconstruction of dead people. And this is how it would work. Supposedly, what they would do is they would take all the information available of that person. So they would, you know, scour all their social media, they would put in all available letters and writings and anecdotes and images, and then try to reconstruct that person from all that data. There's an episode of Black Mirror that's the story, where they offer, a company offers a service, if you lose like a relative or a friend or somebody, you can have them reconstructed. And it reconstructs everything from all the available data, it reconstructs them and purports to be that. Which raises a similar question of personal identity. If they take all of that stuff and create something that acts like the person, is that the dead person back?
No.
And the answer is probably no. Because it'd always be.
It's just memories of what the person was.
Yeah, and also there's a practical thing of, you don't put everything you are doesn't get put into social media and storage, so there would be missing parts. And the question is, what are the missing, what's missing? And so the singularity in a way kind of horrifies me, because you would have, because their plan is to recreate people and put all that stuff into a living like clone, which to me would be a moral abomination, because they're taking a person, a clone, and just destroying their identity and stuffing in someone else's life in there. And that seems like not the worst crime possible, but
It is a
The clone,
desperation.
terrible
the
crime.
clone is supposed to be like a clean slate.
Yeah, that's horrible too.
So I guess they just like keep it knocked out
Yeah, yeah,
until the moment arrives for them to like wake the clone up and just put all the data in there really quickly.
yeah, and make it, you're replacing someone else's, dead loved one, which is morally horrible. At least on my view, which is totally right. Yeah, because that's wrong. It's super wrong. That's why when people get so excited about something, I'm like, singularity is a nightmare. Not the worst nightmare, but it is a nightmare. All the stuff that he wants, that's nightmare scenarios. Yeah. So it's probably going to come true. Because as a rule, if X is a nightmare, X probably comes true. Just a basic fact of life. It's like NX equals real. So, worse than Murphy's Law. It's a nightmare law. So, again, Locke's solution is God prevents this from happening. Because, problems. But again, there is that concern, if you are your memory, it can be copied. And even if you don't think you're a memory, there is that general question, can a person actually be backed up or copied? And of course, a backup entails that you can be copied, which means if what you are can be copied, there can be a lot of you. But if what you are can't be copied, then backups and these things, they wouldn't work. There'd be something walking around pretending to be you, but it wouldn't be you. It would be an imposter with all your memories, but not
Which
you.
would increase the crime rate.
Yeah, maybe.
Because somebody don't wanna get rid of them.
Well, yeah, they have the usual thing when two, for some reason in some sci-fi that is, if two clones meet, they hate each other, which would be weird, because actually you'd be like, we're pretty similar, let's just, get along.
Well, mathematically, wouldn't that you were supposed to have it as the two clones, would the two variations would hate each other, because like, they're supposed to not negate each other.
Well, I think the theory is that since I guess if there's any theory behind it, is that if the two clones and memory copies are the same, then the person you'd hate the most would be the person that's exactly like you. Which would seem weird, because think of they would like all the things you like. Suppose you really like playing, an Xbox game, and no one else, you can't get other people to play, and, you'd be like, yeah, let's play some Xbox. Oh, I hate that. Or like when you're ordering food, it's like you like a certain type of pizza. And they're like, yeah, let's get that pizza. Oh, I hate you for liking that. So, I mean, of course, I guess the thing that would cause some trouble would be they would know all like your secrets and all the stuff. So maybe that would be the thing.
Because everybody wanna be unique and different.
No, people don't want that.
Yes, they do.
They want to be like everybody else. Have you met people? Now then he considers a second scenario. Could you have same substance but different people? So what he's imagining here is reincarnation. Or basically, to be sci-fi, memory erasing. So he asks us to imagine the following scenario. So suppose you've got a case where you've got the same soul, but none of the consciousness transfers, however that works. And Locke says, if you have the same consciousness as someone else, but not the same, if you have the same soul as someone else, but not the same consciousness, you're not that person. Again, because for him, the consciousness is the person. In his example, you have Nestor at the Battle of Troy, and suppose somehow Nestor's soul ends up becoming your soul. You have no recollection of the Battle of Troy, you have no idea that you have Nestor's soul. Locke says that you wouldn't be Nestor. It would just be kind of a weird fact about you that you have Nestor's soul. And he uses an analogy. And I'll illustrate it with like kind of a sci-fi example. Or you could use like a magic example. Suppose you have a scientist or wizard who, they have a device, magical or scientific, where they can scan you and it'll give a list of every person who once had that soul. Yeah, kind of like a Carfax for the soul, listing all the previous owners. And they scan your soul and you find this list. And you have no memory of any of that. Would you think you were those people? No, given Locke's view, you'd say, well, how interesting, but no. I mean, to use this analogy, imagine you had a device that would scan your, and this is the analogy he uses about having the same molecules. Imagine you had a device that would scan your body, and then it would give a magical list, based on, percentage-wise, of every other human who had those exact molecules, going from like the highest match, 100% down to like however low you want, like 0.00, like they have one molecule. And suppose by pure chance you have 100% match to Nestor. At one point in Nestor's life, he had every molecule that you now have in your body. Amazing coincidence. But would you say you were Nestor? No, like if you found out like, wow, there's a 100% match between you and a rock back in the Jurassic, you'd be like, okay. But you wouldn't say that you were the rock. Or something even worse, like a T-Rex, some T-Rex dumplings. You wouldn't say, well, therefore I'm T-Rex dumplings. But that would explain a lot. So Locke says, as long as you don't have the memories, the consciousness, not you. So the soul could, keep on going, but it's not you unless the consciousness is in there. Or again, so he claims. Now there are thinkers, of course, like Descartes, who would say you are your soul. So if you don't remember, being Nestor, someone like Descartes would say, well, if you had Nestor's soul, you were Nestor. And, you're in a way still Nestor, because that's the soul. But again, in Locke's view, you are the consciousness, so wherever it goes, you go. And if it doesn't go there, that's not. So why is concern about personal identity? Well, leading into it, we saw it's basically a matter of ethics, namely responsibility, accountability, and justice. Now, laying aside the metaphysics, it's only just to punish someone if they actually committed a crime. I mean, laying aside all other concerns, the base idea is if there's a crime committed, the only person that should be justly punished is the person who committed that crime. Likewise, when handing out rewards, the only person entitled to that reward is the person who earned it. And the challenge is sorting out, it's kind of like the Cinderella problem, whoever wears the glass slipper, super dangerous, is, the princess or however that works. And so you just got to find the right match. Now, Locke, being a devout Christian, he had a concern about Judgment Day. Now, as he saw it, he went with the view that on Judgment Day, that all of the dead will rise up. Again, not in like a Walking Dead zombie style deal, but in everybody's, resurrected back in life. And Judgment Day, of course, is the whole point of it is right in the name. all about the judgment. And so the question is, you know, for each person is heaven or hell. Now, if God just goes and creates people that just like look like famous people, you know, this guy looks like Hitler, this person looks like, you know, Mother Teresa, and throws that, you know, one in hell and one in heaven, that's not really fair. It'd be just like the police saying, well, you know, suspect is a, you know, teenager, so let's just grab some teenager. Okay, you're a teenager, good enough.
They do it.
I do that. Here's why it's unjust. Yeah, they're breaking Locke's basic principle. And so for the person that looks like Hitler to be punished for those crimes, that's got to be Hitler. Likewise, for the person that looks like Mother Teresa to be rewarded for Mother Teresa's good deeds, has to be Mother Teresa. So, and Locke is aware that, you know, God can't give everybody back their original body because there's not enough body to go around. And so and for him, the body is not critical. So it doesn't matter that God creates everybody, you know, new bodies. What matters is that the consciousness of each is the correct consciousness. And so for Locke, the way this will work out is, you know, on Judgment Day, Hitler's consciousness ends up back in a Hitler, you know, new Hitler body, and Mother Teresa's ends up back in, you know, new Mother Teresa body, and then Hitler pit of fire forever, and Mother Teresa, you know, heaven. You know, same so on for all the good and bad. And so for Locke, a critical part of personal identity is that, is, you know, divine justice. And again, if, the movie Angel Heart, kind of weird movie. I think it's like rated like R2X, so you have been warned. But it deals with that kind of thing, about a person who's trying to avoid hell by essentially changing covering his personal identity with someone who's not, you know, a person who's not held up.
It's a lot of killing and murdering.
Of course. Oh, it's a movie. That's like a requirement for movies. Like even the what was the one about singing? The one about acapella singers, Pitch Perfect. A lot of killings and murdering and that too. Just behind the scenes. You just didn't see it happening. Now he next illustrates his view with the example of the prince and the cobbler, as opposed to the prince and the pauper. So he says, imagine if you have the soul and the consciousness of a prince takes over the body of a cobbler, and of course, given Locke's theory, here's how it plays out. This would be the same human as the cobbler, because for Locke, same human means, you know, living body. And of course, anybody seeing this would think it was the cobbler. You know, the driver's license and stuff would match the cobbler. But Locke, given his theory, he would say this would not be the same person as the cobbler, because the person is the conscious. Yeah, the person would be the prince, because that's the consciousness. So he believes that. You know, it's just another illustration of his theory. So again, the key for Locke is person is not the body, not the soul. The person is their consciousness. Now one thing that does create a bit of confusion, perhaps, is he always has, except for that one case, the consciousness is always like in a soul, kind of going along with it. But for him, the person is not their soul, they are their consciousness, but he does use examples where the soul, the consciousness is in the soul, and the soul and consciousness get shifted around.
So question, what would you say in the case of a schizophrenic?
Good question. A couple possibilities. One is that it's one person who's just, you know, they're acting like separate people, but they're not really separate people. He does actually, given his view, would allow for that. If you have one soul, you know, in a body, but there are multiple consciousnesses in there, any one of which is commanded at a time, for Locke, that would be not multiple personalities, but multiple persons. So given his view, if you could somehow have separate consciousnesses and memories in the body, and he does consider, cases just like that, then you could have true multiple person disorder, where you have too many consciousnesses in the soul.
What does he say about lowering consciousness, like subconscious and like regular planet consciousness and stuff like that?
He seems to think that your mind is, you're kind of aware of everything that's happening in your mind. And again, the problem with repressed memory is, Locke obviously had to be able to forget stuff and so on. But he seems to think that, because you get an argument with Leibniz about the question of innate ideas. Not about memories as such, but innate ideas. And Leibniz said that you can have all these innate ideas that you're not aware of. And he gives the analogy, two analogies. One is to, if you live by a waterfall, or by, to use one example, by traffic, you stop hearing it. You just don't notice it anymore.
Say that again.
If you live by a waterfall, his example, or like a modern one, if you live by traffic long enough, you just
It overlooks it, the mind overlooks it.
yeah, eventually you just filter it out. So in a way, you're still aware of it, but you're not really conscious of it.
Conscious of it.
And so the other analogy he uses is that the ideas are in the mind like there are veins in marble. And so like, which is apparent, I didn't know this until I read Leibniz, so I looked it up on the Googles. Like I knew from carving wood that there are, if you ever carve wood, there's a grain to it, and et cetera. And marble also has like grain to it and, veins and stuff, which makes sense because it's denser and less dense stone. And so his view is like, in a way, the statue already is in the marble, you just gotta kind of free it. And so Leibniz thinks you can have all kinds of stuff in your mind that you are not consciously aware of, but it's still in there. And Locke, his arguments and ideas is when you go and look around for them, you don't see them. And so his view seems to be you're aware of what's in there. Now that is of course a big debate in obviously metaphysics, philosophy of mind, but also psychology and neurology, or the idea like what's in there and what are you aware of and how does all that work?
Does he come before Hegel, or does Hegel come before him?
Locke before. Locke is 1600s and Hegel is later on. Hegel right before Marx. So yeah, Locke, Hegel, Marx.
So what would Hegel say about Locke's idea of conscious being and personal identity?
Actually, I don't know, because I read Hegel, but I have no idea what Hegel meant about. To be honest, I have no idea what Hegel meant about anything, or Heidegger for that matter. Because I read his stuff and I'm like, I don't know. So I'll be honest, I don't know. I don't know. But someone does.
Well, no, just because when he talks about like subconsciousness and everything, and how it's like a divided level of consciousness, it kind of makes it harder just for your consciousness and memory and stuff like that to be tied to your personal identity. And so it's like, I just felt like that, like I haven't had a chance to fully, but it's like going through like Hegel and everything. That's one reason why I asked it, because I feel like he would be the best person to have like a sound idea of what personal identity is, taking into account all of that.
Yeah, later thinkers get, especially non-empiricists, one thing with the empiricists is their view is you got to be able to detect it with your senses. So it makes sense that if you go in and look and you don't experience it, it's not there. Whereas rationalists believe there are things that you can have in there that you're not immediately aware of, that you may become aware of them later or built in. Yeah, so the complexity of consciousness is something that runs all through philosophy. And later thinkers, you get like, for example, Freud has his id, ego, superego, which he stole from Plato, the three parts of the soul. But then when you start getting really elaborate psychological theories, like the subconscious, the unconscious, you get like, Jungian archetypes and stuff. Then you get these theories of all kinds of stuff going on in there. Then you get into recent years, they have the idea of like completely repressed memories. And so one of the questions is how much, like say with levels in the mind, there's what we're sort of like, what's playing like on the screen right now. Then there's a question of like, how much other stuff is in there, and how deep does that go? You know, how, and there are people, it gets kind of weird, but of course there are people who claim there's like a species subconscious, that down in there, somehow in our genetic memory, or memories of, that go way back to like single cells and stuff.
Is that separate from like a zeitgeist?
Yeah, genetic memory I think is separate from that. And then there's also the question like, do we have archetypes in there? Yeah, so what's in the mind, what lies beneath, is a question, you know, that philosophers and cognitive psychologists and stuff have been debating, you know, long. I think the general view now seems to be, yeah, obviously we got like stuff in there we're not aware of, and then the question is, how deep does that go? Yeah, Locke seems to think that, given his battle with Leibniz, he seems to think that you are aware of the contents of your mind, and that you may not be, I mean, you're obviously not aware of every single memory, but it's kind of like, to use it, it's like a well-lit library where all your memories are like books, and you should be able to go and get them. And if you don't remember, those books are gone.
Still there.
Oh, they'll be, if you don't remember, they'll be gone. You know, permanently gone, if you permanently didn't remember.
So, do we think that there's a way to bridge the gap between the memories that are suppressed way deep into the memories of now?
Good question, because there was a big disaster where psychiatrists and psychologists were digging up supposedly repressed memories and of abuse, childhood abuse, and it turned out like apparently like all these parents were suddenly being accused of abusing their kids because these people were finding these repressed memories. And it turned out that no, those memories were not repressed, they were fabricated memories. Because there is the question of, you know, when they're doing that techniques, are they digging up, unearthing, opening the door to the room, or are they just telling the person things that never happened? And one thing about memory is our memories are crap.
Yeah,
To be honest. So people, if someone hears a story,
enough.
they'll remember it, and it can happen very, very quickly. Like they've done, you know, studies where they'll have people have something happen, you know, to people who don't know they're being studied, and then they'll have someone come in and ask what happened, and if enough people kind of like give a different story, people will change their story and their memory, even though it happened, you know, not that way. So, yeah, in terms of how memory works and stuff, rule number one is memory is crap, so don't trust it. But then the question is like, in terms of like how deep it goes, what's in there, how does it work? Which is one reason why it's hard to make it part of personal identity, because it's so bad. So Locke seemed to have a lot of confidence in it, but you know, it seems like a terrible thing. Which, you know, our good dad Fred Hume will be pretty critical about it. Now, Locke does know the thing about, you know, problem been pointed out, like he's talking about, you know, person, human, soul, etc. And one problem that arises in philosophy and anywhere is the problem of, you know, what are you calling things? I mean, to use an example I brought up before about the example of meat. Yeah. So there's all kinds of different ways we use the term meat. I mean, the intuitive view is it's something that's going to be cut off an animal. Now, the meat industry, of course, they're aware that synthetic meat is going to be the thing, and so they want to head that off. They don't want that being sold as meat. Just
Do
like
you think they'll do that?
they're already doing it. They're already bringing lawsuits against that to say they can't use the term meat. Just like the sugar industry went after when the corn syrup, they wanted to get it labeled as corn sugar, but sugar is not defined legally as chemists define sugar. Is defined legally the way the food industry wants it defined, and so they can't call high fructose corn syrup sugar, even though it is to every chemist or nutritionist, or biologist, it's sugar. Yeah, and so as Mill pointed out, a lot of struggles are over the words we use. What do we mean violent. And if we push it, we quickly realize that, you know, if we think about it and sort of objectively, there's all kinds of things our words could, even something as simple as like meat, that seems like easy. But you end up with, well, do we mean that it has to be something that's removed from an animal? Well, suppose we genetically engineer an animal that's made partially out of broccoli. It has broccoli growing on it. Is broccoli now meat? You'd say, well, no, but it comes off an animal. Yeah, so we think that it's gotta be the composition. But what if you have a Star Trek replicator, you know, sci-fi, and you say to the thing, you know, replicator, you know, steak, medium rare, keep, Earl Grey. And you know, it replicates, you know, a steak. But of course, it never was part of an animal, it's just molecules configured. Is that meat? Well, it wasn't cut off an animal, but to all tests, it would be, you know, it would taste like meat, it would smell like meat, it would analyze as meat, but it never came from an animal because it was created by, you know, replicator.
Yeah, Picard and Curtis is a simple replication.
Yeah. And so, or even something as simple as our term, you know, the identity of meat becomes complicated by the language. Now what we could do is what philosophers often do, is you start like subscripting stuff. You could have like meat sub A, sliced from an animal, meat sub R, replicator meats, you know, meat sub S, synthetic meats. And Locke is trying to do this with, you know, when you're talking about a person. So he says, yeah, we throw all these words around, etc., and we can mean anything by our words, which leads to kind of a nightmare. But he says what we need to do is be careful what we mean. So he says, by person I mean this. And he thinks, perhaps optimistically, that as long as we say what we mean, like if I say, like we may all disagree about what the word meat means, but if I say, well, okay, let's make schmeat, and that's synthetic meat, you know, and we could have like, you know, other types. And I say that what I mean by this is a substance that is chemically identical to meat, but did not come from an animal. Or we could have smeat with a C, which would be cloned, which means it wasn't grown in an animal, but the cells were cloned onto a vat, so that would be, you know, smeat. Not to be confused with smeat. Yeah, and so as long as we have our terms, you know, it's like how mathematicians, you know, they use, you know, subscripts and stuff. So let's call this A. Yeah, so as long as we're careful what we're talking about, then even though we might disagree on what truly is meat, we can agree, okay, schmeat is, you know, it's chemically this. Smeat, this is clone cells. Are they all meat? Well, that's where we have to fight, whether we should stick the term meat over it. And Locke basically says, hey, as long as we're careful, then it's all okay. And as we'll see in the future, Hume says, no. So Locke, again, pushing his line, his push is similar to his reply to skepticism. Now, if you take the class in epistemology coming up this spring, probably in the spirit of the room, one of the key questions in there is the problem of the external world. How do you know what's really real for real? Now, Locke had a very practical response. He said, you can't be certain. But what matters is not so much is the fire real, but does it hurt when you're sticking your head in the fire? And he kind of jokingly said, you know, hey, if there's any skeptics out there, go stick your head in the fire, see how that works. And so his view is a very practical one. What you care about is not, is fire real? What you care about is, does experiencing fire hurt? And the answer is, yeah, it hurts a whole bunch. So don't stand in that. And so his concern is about pleasure and pain, happiness and misery. So that's his focus. So his concern about self is not about what substance it is, it's about those fields. And of course what does the feels is the consciousness. You know, that's where the feeling is. So his concern is, again, not when you wake up, you don't say, gosh, I'm the same material soul or not. Your concern is about with your happiness and misery and pleasure and pain and stuff. And for Locke, that is what matters. And so, again, he uses a little finger example again. He doesn't think that you are your finger, but if you had like a weird scenario where your finger gets cut off, and instead of you looking down and saying, oh my God, my finger, you're in your finger looking up saying, oh my God, my body, Locke says, you are your consciousness. That's where you go. 'Cause now again, it now turns again back to justice. And we'll do the setup for it and complete it on the Wednesday. Now, as we saw, the foundation of justice, punishment and reward, is all about personal identity. The person who deserves the punishment or reward must be the person who did that. And so, it gives a little finger example again, totally obsessed with that. And so the personal identity for him, and we'll close on this, is, again, it's not having the same soul, the same body, the same consciousness. So he gives the example of Socrates. If you had a Socrates waking and Socrates sleeping that had different consciousnesses, it would be unjust to punish one for what the other did. Just like it would be unjust to punish, some random teenager because you're just looking for a teenager, or to punish one twin for what another did just because you can't tell them apart. So next time we'll pick up with this exciting slide, the problem of punishment.